Good afternoon, and Tashi Jalek. Today we are organizing or celebrating the International Museum Day, and this will go for 2 more days, today, tomorrow, and day after. So for this 3-day International Museum Day program, we are organizing a day-long documentary screening. Then we have this one, Thanga exhibition, as well as Tibetan traditional costume display, and we are also organizing a talk and lecture on Tibet related issue twice a day. So today we have a speaker, Penghsuan Lee from Taiwan. She is East Asia Regional Coordinator of International Tibet Network and is based in Taiwan. She is also the graduate student of Political Science in National Taiwan University. She is a member of Taiwan Friends of Tibet, as well as student for Free Tibet Taiwan chapter. And before that, she has worked or interned at the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy based in Dharamshala. So today she is going to speak on a topic, Taiwan and Tibet, challenges and opportunities. So please join me in welcoming Penghsuan Lee for over here.
So hi everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the exhibition and all the film screening here. And yeah, actually I wasn't really expecting such audience. Yeah, but so today, and thanks for Dashi Kunta inviting me here for the talk. And just like he introduced, my name is Penghsuan and I'm a Taiwanese. I was born and raised in Taiwan. And I joined the Tibet movement since 2013, like 3 years ago, and now I'm sort of working in a Tibetan group called International Tibet Network. We are organization trying to serve as a platform and mobilizing the Tibet groups all around the world for more effective and joint actions and campaigns. So I'm based in the East. I'm based in Taiwan. I serve as coordinating the East Asian groups, the Tibetan groups in Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Philippines, and Marine Southeast Asia. And as a Taiwanese and working for the Tibetan movement, for these years I have reflection and some thoughts on these both countries that I really love and I really work for. And of course there are some similarities and differences among the movement, but for me I would like to share with you guys about some thoughts and experience of my own, and a bit suggestion that how us can follow on with this kind of trend. Yeah, so as a Taiwanese working for the Tibet movement, I've often asked about the reason that I work for this cause. People ask, for example, my parents would ask there are so many movements in Taiwan, so why are you coming to India and doing all these things? It's so far from your home. But of course, the most, probably you guys here, or most Tibet supporters and activists, we became part of this because of the belief of human rights, freedoms, and all these kind of universal values. But also, I think there are something more that I will share later, is that we can sort of have a look on. Yeah, so since you guys are here in Dharamsala, I would assume that you know a bit about the Tibetan movement and the history, what it was in Tibet and the Tibet occupation in 1959, the oppression and crackdown, so on, the Cultural Revolution, the 2008 uprising, the self-immolations, and so on and so on. It's like a heavy thing, but I assume that you guys know about that. So I think I would talk a little bit, because like we're going to talk about those, so I will talk a little bit, like having a little introduction about what it was and what it is now in Taiwan. So like you guys might notice about Taiwan is like a really small island near China, right? But although it's a really small place, it's like a really diverse society. We have indigenous people who lived there for 1,000 years. We have Han Chinese immigrant like moved to the island 400 or 500 years ago. Like my ancestors should be a part of them. And also there are like the Chinese immigrant from China after 1949, after the KMT, the Chinese Nationalist Party, they lost the civil war with the Chinese Communist Party. And also there are more and more people immigrated from the Southeast Asia because of the marriage, occupation, and so on. So it's like a really diverse place, and such a society, it created kind of like this interpreter kind of atmosphere among those people. So like as far as I know, like when I learned from the history, there's like so many protests and uprising. Well, it's also because Taiwan was governed and colonized by so many countries before. There was Netherlands, Spain, China, Japanese, and like so on and so on. So we have this really strong and rich kind of spirit of like struggle or the love of our freedom. But unfortunately, we have, although like we have such spirits, but just like I said, Taiwan was like colonized by various countries, and the biggest and the most influential one must be the Japanese colonization from 1895 to 1945. Like it ends after the World War II, and like these protests, uprising, and rebellions have echoed for the whole 50 years. Like I don't know, because when I got here, I realized that there was a Taiwanese movie which was super famous in the Tibetan community called Tibet Balai. It's like a movie about how the indigenous people, they fight for their own freedom, or like fight for the oppression against fight for oppression from Japanese people, the Japanese government. And well, these are just like examples, but these are happening. These been happening in our societies. And after 1945, just like I said, the KMT government, they came to the island, they claimed the sovereignty, and the 49, they lost the civil war in China. So like everything came to Taiwan, and they were trying to put Taiwan as like a basement of fighting back to the mainland. And also because of that, like there's like the people from China and the people who was already in Taiwan are actually, they were not capable to like stay with each other. There was so many differences throughout this half century. So there was like more and more conflict and this protest and also crackdowns going on with the islands. For example, in 1947, like in Taiwan, we called it this February 28 crackdown or massacre. There were in the incident and the killings follow on, there were more than 20,000 people, and most of them they're selectively killed. Like most of them are individuals. Those are intellectuals. They're intellectuals which are having really high education. They lead they have huge influence in their own communities, and they're killed by the KMT government, and that's sort of there's one of their efforts trying to like mute the society. But well, just like Tibetan people, like the public wouldn't be muted just by that. So there were like protests and attempted to different struggle for freedom after that. And well, there are also people self-humiliated for according to his own word, there are people suffering with it for the 100% freedom of expression. And these these people, their effort really opened the door for like the Taiwanese right now, and that's why like after 1990s, we have this peaceful transformation. We turn into a democracy. We have this general elections and so on. We have the full freedom of expressions and all kinds of freedoms. And I sort of go into too much details, but I was just trying to say that these are the atmosphere that we've been created for the few, probably 70 or 80 years, and that's what we're having now. But it's not like happy ever after, after the democratization. We're still having problems with the Chinese government. Like they're still, as long as you know, we're not part of UN. We're still like being claimed as a inseparable part of China, and we're muted, uprised in all kind of like international events and venues. So when it comes to our domestic issue, like when our government they started to getting closer and closer to China, we're facing such problems again. That we're under the threat, like not only from China, but also from our own governments, because they're getting closer and closer. So that's why in 2014, which was 2 years ago, we have like one of the biggest social movements. Some people would say that it's student movement, but I would say that it's like a movement which belongs to the whole society. Like there are students and citizens. We occupy the parliament for more than a month, against the idea of because the government they thought that they can just easily get through with there was a cross-strait service trade agreement among Taiwanese government and the Chinese government, but these wasn't get through the this wasn't through the public consent. All the parliament wasn't. They didn't agree that, and the government passed everything. So that's why we had such movements, and it actually affected in the political sphere. So that's why after 2 days, actually we are welcoming our new government, which is having a more careful and conservative perspective on getting connection with China. So these are the things. And also I would like to talk a bit about the history about Tibet and Taiwan, because it was actually really complicated. Right now it seems like there's a lot of Taiwanese coming here. There are Tibetans in Taiwan. It seems like Taiwan and Tibet in exile are having a really positive image toward each other and rather a good relationship. But in some years before, it was totally a different story, because just like I said, after 1949, the ROC government, the Republic of China government, they came to Taiwan and claimed the sovereignty, but they also claimed that they owned the whole China, and the Communist Party was just like a rebelling group. So since they said that they owned the whole mainland China, they also said that they owned Tibet. So when the 1915 uprising happened, they're actually supporting Tibetans inside Tibet in the perspective that they are our fellow citizens. They are the citizens of ROC, and they're under the oppression and crackdowns of those rebellions. So it's kind of funny, because this is not, although we have this kind of supported attitude toward Tibet, but it's under this anti-CCP concept, and it's not actually supported to Tibet at all. So after that, when His Holiness and when all the Tibetan government they came to India, they settled in Dharamsala, the Taiwanese government, they failed. Of course, they are still a dictatorship, and also because of that, they failed to provide any kind of help. Yeah, because they just have a totally different kind of stand. And but generally, okay, I can just share this. This is a clip that I just found yesterday. Is the one clipping from the Central Daily is a governmental newspaper in Taiwan. By that time, it's already closed. But so it talks about the uprising in a really positive manner, saying that it's against the CCP dictatorship and so on. But just like I said, they are not actually supported to Tibetan people, and they're not respecting Tibetans at all. Yeah, so these might sound like really ridiculous to us right now, but it was like really genuine, true to the people during that time. Yeah. And so after that, the ROC regime in Taiwan, we formed this Tibet-Mongolian Affairs Commission in our government, claiming that okay, they're in charge of all like the Tibetans and Mongolian issues, probably around the world. But actually, like these are still office operating until now, but they're not doing much effort on really helping the Tibetans and Mongolian, even in our own country. So this is kind of like adding on the more negative image to the Tibetans here in Dharamsala. I wasn't like, of course, I wasn't born like by that time, but according to my friend, they told me that actually years before, like if you're telling people you're from Taiwan or you're Tibetan who are connected with the Taiwanese government or the ROC government, that's kind of like a really bad impression on people. Like people would kind of regard you like a traitor kind of thing, because you're not really like supporting your own people and stuff. So yeah, but this this was like the governmental stand, their position. But gradually, since His Holiness has gained his influence, after the 1970s, and there's a lot of Tibetan Buddhists around the world, of course, also in Taiwan. And these sort of, after the democratization, after the Taiwan getting freer, we have like human rights activists, human rights organizations based in Taiwan, and they also started to, look on the human rights issues around the world, especially inside China. And Tibet was like the most oppressed area, under the CCP dictatorship. So that's why in Taiwan it's like gaining more and more intentions. And also there's a lot, there's something worth mentioning is like, I said there's a lot of Tibetan Buddhists in Taiwan, and they have their teachers, like the High Lamas from either Tibet or from the exile communities. And by that time, like many of those Rinpoches and monks, they actually have the experience of being oppressed by the CCP government. They were imprisoned, they were being sent to this labor camp and so on. And their story actually touched the Tibetan Buddhists. Like you might see that there are people, they don't care about how they don't care about their own religion. They don't care about how the political aspect of the Tibetan issue. But in Taiwan, they do care because their gurus, their teachers, are actually being oppressed by such regime, and the story was so real to them. Yeah, but so gradually, after Taiwan became a democratic country, in 1997, His Holiness has his first visit to Taiwan. It was the first one, and then after that, he went there twice. And these are kind of getting this connection between the Taiwanese society, the real connection between Taiwanese society and the Tibetan community here, or the community exile around the world. And that's why there's started to have this real connections. And so gradually, we started to have such a connection between these two communities. And when it comes, so that's why in here, I think people are getting to know more about Taiwan, and in the Taiwanese society, we're getting more and more known about Tibet. Like before that, we only learned Tibet from the Chinese history. Like Tibet was a strong empire, which at the side of the Chinese empire and stuff. But yeah, we're kind of getting to know more and more about it. And when it comes to the comparison, I think, of course, just like I said, there's been a lot like just like I said, after 1990s, Taiwan sort of became a land of freedom which is able to nourish all kind of social movements, including Tibetan movements. So I just quickly slip through some photos and give you some examples about it. Actually, since 2007, the Tibetan community in Taiwan was strong enough to initiate their own March 10 commemoration in Taiwan, and it continued till now. Yeah, according to my friend's story, he said that when they initiated this march, in Taiwan, in the first year there was only 7 people. Yeah, there are 50 cops and 7 people just for a small march. It was kind of embarrassing. But then, after a few years, because of their own efforts, it's getting more and more support. So in a year with the most participants, there was actually 3,000. And these because we have marched, through the Taipei city, which is the capital and the most populated city in Taiwan, and we also have all kinds of events and talks in this whole month. So such thing, it's not only generate support from the Taiwanese people, because Taiwan has become a really popular tourist destination of Chinese people. We have a lot of Chinese tourists inside the country. So when we have such events, it really attract their attention. Because they're mostly living under the censorship of the CCP government, they didn't really know about what Tibet is. When they see the snowline flags flying in the city, they were being curious. They thought that it's really pretty, and they were asking us about what it is, what really happened, and in this way, these people are educated, and they might be, going back to their country, and started to kind of spreading the correct information to other people. Yeah. And also, this is another. It's a campaign. It's called Cycling for Tibet. On every Wednesday, I think you guys might know. Every Wednesday, it's called Laka, the White Wednesday, and people. Whether Tibetans or Tibetan supporters inside or outside Tibet all around the world, where we would have such commitment that, right now I'm not Tibetan, but I'm wearing chupa because today is Wednesday. And also for Tibetans, they must speak Tibetan, eat Tibetan food, dress in Tibetan dress and all the things, just for this, reviving the Tibetan culture and spirit. So this is what we do in Taiwan. We cycling through the city, and we have flags with us, we have flyers, we're shouting slogans, and gaining attractions from people. So that's why, during such events, we'll often stop at people, when we're at the waiting for the traffic lights, and people in other cars would ask, what is this, or what are you guys doing? And yeah, and after that, they gradually became part of us. And there's a few more examples I'll get to quicker. There was the candlelight vigil of Denden Rinpoche, which was really respected in High Lama inside Tibet. He was detained and sentenced in 2002, and unfortunately he passed away in the Chinese prison last year. So by the time we got this really sad news, we started to because we've been having this network through the March 10 commemoration. So we started to mobilize, and we started to spreading the news, having candlelight vigils, talking to media and all those things. And this really helping the Taiwanese media, the media in Chinese, to cover the news. And this news will gradually being spread into the Chinese society, through internet. It go through the Chinese netizens. They would put them into simplified Chinese. It's spreading on, of course, secretly, because their internet are censoring it, but secretly they're getting to know about that. Yeah. And this is another, it's when a few years back when the Tibetans in this social, like in Karte, there are like huge protests and crackdowns going on for around like half a year, and we're also having events in Taipei for like in support of them. Yeah, so like when it comes to sort of this conclusion kind of thing, when I think through like the things that I share with you guys, I would often I would come to these questions like, how can we learn from, like, how can me as a Taiwanese learn from Tibetan movement, and how can Tibetans learn from our own movement, and how, like, why and how should we support each other? And well, of course, I got some answers for now, but it might differ afterward. But for me, in these 3 years that I've been part of the Tibetan movement, I feel that my eyes are actually opened by the strong activism here. Like, if you guys are here for already a few days, you might witness the campaign in Main Square yesterday for the release of Penghsuan Lee. Like he was the recognition of Penghsuan Lee, and he was arrested or kidnapped and disappeared for like the 21 years, right? So these kind of things, like, it really amazed me that in the Tibetan movement, they can actually make one campaign like living lively for 21 years. They haven't stopped it. And I think these things are actually pretty rare, like in all kinds of movements around the world. And also, because the Tibetan issue is really like internationalized, it's close, like it's like very connected with the international society. And the Tibetan activists are really familiar and really fluent in using all kinds of UN mechanisms. I think this is like something which others are lack of, and Tibetans are so good at. And also, there's another thing I think it outruns a lot of the movements around the world, is that for Tibet activists, they insist on using the non-violence approach because of the inspiration of His Holiness. And also, like, after a lot of researchers, we can see that a non-violence approach, like in long term, it works better than a violence one. Like, it's like the violence, it turns for violence, but people wouldn't really think of that. And I think the Tibet movement is a really good example. And for, like, when talking back, like, to the Tibet, how Tibetan can learn from the Taiwanese movement, I think the thing is that since Taiwan is like it's not really, because Taiwan hasn't really faced like such severe crackdown and oppression like what we're having inside Tibet, but I think what we're learning about democracies, and we're learning about, you know, how we can live in each other but also have this diversity will really help Tibetans, because in the exiled Tibetan community, we just had this first general election a few years ago in 2011, right? Like we have, like, Tibetans have elected the first Sikkim, and this, like, the one we have this year was like the second. So what it feels like the Tibetan exile community is a really new democracy, and it's like a really experimental one. And for me, I think what we're having in Taiwan will be a really good example for Tibetans. And also, so like when it comes to the second question, like why or how we should support each other, I think according to my own experience, a collective campaign or action is always stronger than doing it individually, especially when we're facing like such a strong and powerful threat like China. Because as long as you know, like China is very used to confronting and defeating different countries. Like there's a lot of countries having problems with them, but they're really good at defeating every country like one by one. Like they're having this bilateral agreements. They would punish them like through, you know, their trade and all the things. But if these countries, if all the countries which has problems with China work together, like it would be a lot stronger force for them. And I think this is a lot of Tibet. This is actually a lot of Tibetan groups has talked about here and around the world. For example, like in the Tibetan campaign of the campaign of Tibetan River, like the groups here, they are also calling for other countries, which is the downstream of the Tibetan rivers, like for collective campaign action, because they're all affected by the Chinese policy. And so in this way, I think all like people who are affected by this strong and kind of scary influence of China, we should all work together. And like after this, I will show you guys a few examples, and we might be able to like open for some Q&As. This is the one thing that I really like about, just like I mentioned, that we have the Sunflower movement in 2014. We occupy the government, the parliament, and well, by that time we didn't have this good. We were not that good at connecting with the international society and so on. But our Tibetan friends here, they do help us a lot. Like they have this street like petition. It just in Makoganj, like they collect signatures and spreading the news of our movement in Taiwan, and of course like it gains more and more support, which I'm like really thankful for. And this is just at the scene of the Sunflower movement. There are the guy who's talking in front. He's actually Tibetan in Taiwan, and he's one of the really Tibetan activist who works really hard. And since we're supporting his movement, he's been really selfless on our own movement. So that's why, like, as a Tibetan, as a person who has whose country was occupied and his people was oppressed by the Chinese government, he came out into the parliament hall and supported us in this way. And lastly, I would like to talk about this campaign, which is coordinated by our International Tibet Network. Like as you guys know, the Chinese government, they were competing for holding the 2022 Winter Olympic in Beijing. But as you guys might know, in 2008, when they're having the Olympic holding in Beijing, they have so many commitments. They have so many commitments about the human rights in China and especially in Tibet. And by just attempting to have a better image of from the international society, they even have some dialogue with the Tibetan government or with His Holiness representative. But they didn't have this commitment or really work with others. So right after 2008, they abandoned every promises that they had, and they stopped the dialogue. So again, when they're all running for holding the Olympic once again, I think it's really important for all of us to question them and pushing them to work more on their human rights and the freedoms inside the country. So this one, well, of course I have to say it wasn't really successful. They still get they still get the permission of holding the Olympics, but these are the groups that we coordinated with. Golojmila, he was a director of one of the documentary film inside Tibet called Leaving Fear Behind. And another director was sentenced into his release just last year, and he success to escape escape to India and also to the Europe. But by that time he was badly tortured by the Chinese government. So now he stood up as a sort of witness, for the Chinese, for what happened in a Chinese prison. And Rabia Kadir was one of the really prominent worker activists. Her family was also oppressed in East Turkestan inside China. And the third one, Enver Batu, he's a Mongolian activist. And as you guys might know, like the Inner Mongolian autonomous region was inside China, and there was also faced really serious discrimination by the Han Chinese and environmental degradation. And the last one was a Chinese activist called Penghsuan Lee, and he's also been working for the democratization and freedom for China for years. So these are like the coalition we had during such movements, and actually, even though this campaign wasn't really successful, but it created like a really good framework among us, and we tried to do this like again and again. We're facing any problem with China, and yeah, this is the thing that I do believe that will help us. And now I hope like someday one Taiwanese delegate would like join them and really have this successful joint action together. So this is what I have to share for today, and thank you guys for listening.
If you have any question, then you can raise the question.
So when I saw the pictures of the events you had in Taipei with the Tibetan flag, I was thinking I've also seen some pictures today from Hong Kong, because I think one of the top CCP leaders is visiting Hong Kong. There was a lady with a Tibetan flag and she's been surrounded by police. Hong Kong police. So I was just wondering about, and I know that there's been a big conference very recently, a kind of first conference of, I think you might have been at it, Chinese and Tibetan, Sino-Tibetan conference in Taiwan.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering about what your comments are in the situation where Hong Kong has become much closed space, but in Taiwan you're about to have a new government, and it seems to be a much more open and potentially can play a much bigger role. Or needs to in the face of the fact that Hong Kong is becoming more and more difficult. And I think if you're at that conference, maybe you could mention that.
Yeah, I think it's. I think the position of Taiwan in such movements are getting more and more important. Well, not only because like now Hong Kong has been like kind of closer space. Yeah, actually, like you just reminding me of that incident. Like. Just today, because one of the high Chinese official, his name is Zhang Dejiang, he visited Hong Kong just today. Actually, I think 6 or 3 days ago. But well, he's one of the the officials with a very conservative kind of view toward the whole country, and so well by today, I think there was more than one individual raising a Tibetan flag and having protests inside. Yeah, like the one I witnessed was a couple, like Mr. and Mrs. Wong, and the slogan they shouted is like, both Hong Kong people and Tibetans need this self-determination. Yeah, so I think this is like a really important gesture of like, showing support to each other and having even though it's like something really small, but it's really an important gesture for like showing support and work together. And for what you just asked about the position of Taiwan, I think it's getting more and more important. Not only because now Hong Kong became really like more and more like a closer space for like freedom of expression and like all these kind of movement, but also because if you want to face if you want to confront the Chinese government, it's really important to recognize the fact that the so-called Chinese are like not the same thing. Yeah, because for like although their citizens are brainwashed, they might have some really conservative views, on different groups of people, on Taiwanese, on Tibetans, on Uyghurs, on Mongolians, but they're also oppressed by the Chinese government. So I think this is one of the things that in the Tibet movement they are trying to do, like a really important one, is that they're trying to do the outreach to Chinese people, because they have this wrong information of what the others are doing. And well, since this government is a dictatorship, it's unnegotiable. I think by this time it's really important for the activists to reach out to the people inside China. And if you want to reach out to people inside China, I think Taiwan is like the most important venue for that. Yeah, either like there are a lot of Chinese coming to Taiwan for tourism, for study, for whatever, for their own job and things, and also the Taiwanese media, Taiwanese these publications, the things in Mandarin, in Chinese, would be the easiest to like kind of convey to the Chinese people. Yeah.
And how about that conference? Because at the beginning of your talk, you talked about the originally Taiwanese were seeing Tibetans as part of the Republic of China. So, what was the kind of discussion at the Sino-Tibetan conference that just happened?
I think by that kind of view is already sort of abandoned by Taiwanese, because yeah, it's just simply unrealistic to think that we're still owning this whole part of China, including Tibet. So the conference you just mentioned, it's a conference held by the Tibet office in Taiwan, and it consists of the like Taiwanese intellectuals and activists, and also Chinese intellectual and activists all around the world. Unfortunately, they weren't able to invite anyone inside China because it's too sensitive, and it might cause a lot of trouble for them. But for these activists and intellectuals, like abroad, the Chinese one abroad, they have this really huge influence to the activists and intellectuals inside China. So yeah, and the good thing is that in their conclusion, like those Chinese intellectuals, they show a real like respect to the right of self-determination of Tibetan people. Like, well, although like right now they would prefer like real autonomy, a middle way approach, than Tibet being a like independent country. But still, they still respect the right of Tibetans, on whatever they want their country to be. Yes, please.
How does the Xi Jinping administration compare to previous administrations concerning Tibet? Is there any change at all, have you seen?
Well, at first I think that the people, like supporters and Tibetans, they actually put a high hope on Xi Jinping, because somehow in his own like experience, and because of his father, which was also really prominent CCP member, he had his father had a really good relationship with His Holiness and some Tibetans inside Tibet, and he visited Tibet before. So, but because of that, actually Tibetans, they put a high hope on Xi Jinping, saying that it might be he might have a more open attitude on the Tibet issue. But unfortunately, no. Like he's, I think there are some media, like in some media, like they describe Xi Jinping as a reincarnation of Mao Zedong, and I think it's pretty accurate. Like that's what he's basically doing. He's having crackdowns on, like, not only on Tibetans, also on like NGO workers inside China, human rights lawyers, the Uyghur people, like in Xinjiang or other places. Yeah, and so that's, I think that's sort of he's doing. Like he's trying to kind of create an image of him, which is really successful in like economy and in administration. But by that way, he's putting actually higher control on the whole China, especially inside Tibet. Yeah.
So, thank Thank you so much, Ms. Lila, for this wonderful talk and presentation, and also for working for the Tibet issue since a very long time. So, for this, we would like to present this Tibet Museum publication, a pictorial book on the history of Tibet. If anybody wants to have this, you can buy from our reception. It just costs 300 rupees, and it covers history from the first king till the China occupation of Tibet and the Tibetan life in exile. So thank you very much. We have tea and drinks outside. So.